Hope everyone's doing good. Welcome to the show. Appreciate everybody being here. All right, here we go. All right. So as soon as you get up in the seat and ready and get yourself set, I'm gonna hit the live button. How's everybody doing on Instagram? Thanks for being here. We're getting ready to do DUIresults.com. You can check it out. Attorney Robert J. Schefter, local, experienced, and reliable. All right, so Facebook, we're getting ready to hit the live. We are live. Hey, Facebook, welcome. Attorney Robert J. Schefter, attorney at law. Bobby, welcome.
How you doing, Shane?
I'm doing good. Good to see you.
Good to see you again.
So the weather didn't stop. You got all your bread and eggs and all that ready to go for
Ready
the
to go,
storms.
ready to
All right.
go.
Good to see you. Look, so what are we talking about today? Thank you everyone for being here.
So today we're going to wrap up our series on field sobriety testing. The first 3 sessions have been on the standardized field sobriety test. There are 3 of those that we covered. Those are the only 3 approved by NHTSA. That's the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. Those were the HGN, that's the follow the pen with your eye test, the walk and turn test, and the one-leg stand. Now, there are a whole host of non-standardized field sobriety tests that officers will use that are not officially approved as a standardized test. So that does affect their reliability even more so. In fact, any of these, I would argue, in court should not be admissible. Some judges will let them in, and then some of them, some won't. So there are 2 main ones that are gaining a lot of traction right now when it comes to alleged drug impairment. Remember, the 3 standardized tests focus on alcohol impairment, but again, drug DUIs are very prevalent now, so they've come up with other tests. One of them is called the lack of convergence test, or what I call the bippity-boppity-boo test, and you'll see why.
Bippity-boppity-boo, I like that.
And the other is the modified Romberg balance test. So it's a fancy name for a pretty simple test. But the first one is lack of convergence. I actually filed a motion in front of a judge to keep this out of a trial, alleging that it's not scientifically valid. We ended up settling that case for a reduced charge, so I never actually litigated it, but I have the motion ready to prepare to challenge it. So the lack of convergence test, Shane, allegedly there are tests that say that if you cannot focus, it's kind of like the pen and eye test. Yeah. If your eyes don't cross or converge when presented with a stimulus, then supposedly you're impaired. But I call it the bippity-boppity-boo test because, I don't know, is that Cinderella or whatever, where the fairy godmother does the bippity-boppity-boo? But I've watched these tests on video from my clients, and this is what the officer does.
And what am I supposed to do?
All right, so don't move your head.
All right.
Follow the tip of the pen.
All right.
And you need to know that I'm going to bring the pen closer to your nose, but I will not hit your nose.
Should I have my glasses on?
That's up to you.
Because they're reading glasses.
Yeah, this is not the HGN test where we're necessarily looking for nystagmus, but that's up to you.
All right.
So again, these are non-standardized, so they're not official clues, but really they're just looking to see if your eyes will cross. So again, fairy godmother says 1, 2. Okay. So, that is the test. And I've watched videos of my clients performing this test, and the officer will do it like a number of times, and
I've never seen that one.
I really have to question, how does that show impairment if your eyes don't cross? And again, we really, like we did with the HGN, we really got to look at environmental conditions. You're on the side of a road, there's likely going to be the officer's emergency lights going. Again, if it's at night, there's going to be lights everywhere. So there's lots of different things here that I think you can really challenge and question, does this really show impairment? If your eyes don't cross, does that mean that you're impaired? So that, again, non-standardized test.
So is the typical thing shut up and lawyer up?
Yeah.
And when people hear that, it's a nice line, we have fun with it, but we're meaning it very respectful and being respectful of the officer, just acknowledging that, hey, right? Can you kind of tell people?
Yeah, and I like to stress this really every episode. I love the slogan "Shut Up and Lawyer Up" because it is a quick and easy way for an individual to remember their rights and what they should do. Again, it is not telling the officer to shut up. I would never ever advise that. But it's telling you, remember, you have the right to remain silent, and you should invoke that right whenever you can in a DUI stop. So all of these tests, all of these field sobriety tests are completely voluntary. There is no penalty for refusing to do those. Now, they may try to use it against you at trial, and I think that's fine. I'd rather have that than have an officer say you're impaired because you failed the bippity-boppity-boo test.
Yeah.
So, again, so shut up and lawyer up is advising individuals to be cognizant of their rights, and when you are done with your contact with law enforcement, then you need to lawyer up. So shut up and lawyer up is really simple advice, not being disrespectful at all to the officer. The second test that I mentioned is the modified Romberg balance test, and it's named after the gentleman who came up with the test. Why it's modified, I'm not quite sure, but this involves really just standing. The officer will instruct you to close your eyes, tilt your head back, and when the officer instructs you to begin,
You want me to do this?
yeah, we can do
All right,
that.
yeah, let's do it.
You like those, don't you?
All right.
All right, so it's pretty simple instructions. I'll just ask you to, when I tell you to start. All right, so stand with your feet together, arms at your side like you are. And when I instruct you to start, I'm going to ask you to close your eyes, slightly tilt your head back. Okay?
Like that? I'm just...
Like that.
Okay.
And then I'm going to ask you to count to 30, or count the passage of 30 seconds. You're not going to count out loud, okay? When you think you've reached 30 seconds, open your eyes, all right?
All right.
So, it was interesting when I was researching this because I always thought the person counted out loud, but what I realized is this is different. You remember the one-leg stand?
Yeah.
When you count to 30, you're specifically instructed to count out loud. Here, they just say, when you think 30 seconds has passed, open your eyes. Okay?
Right.
So give me a second here because I'm going to time you.
All right. They want to see if you're acknowledging real time in your mind, I think.
Right, and they also want to see if you can follow instructions. Again,
Yeah,
these are still divided attention tests.
That's important. I don't think people know that. It's divided of paying attention to instructions and then actually executing it.
Correct.
So there's two parts to all these tests. You need to understand that.
Correct.
And that's why shut up, lawyer up. You just like take that out and let's just follow the way of the legal system.
That's right. Okay. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, so when I say you can begin, you can begin.
All right.
You may begin. Now, while Shane's doing this, I hope, this may or may not distract him, but again, you got to remember, you've likely already done 3 standardized field sobriety tests at this point. If the results are inconclusive or he wants to pursue further, perhaps drug impairment,
30.
then, okay.
How close was I?
You were at 20 seconds.
Oh, wow.
Okay? So now, what's interesting?
I was like, am I counting too fast? Because the Mississippi's I counted too slow in the last one,
Right.
So
Last
I was
one,
trying
you only
to
got
time
to
it.
15.
Yeah, and I was like,
Okay.
well, now they're going to think I'm just going too slow. So this one.
Okay.
Wow.
So now, are you impaired by anything?
No.
You
No.
didn't smoke any vodka?
No.
All right. So under the way they, even though there's not official clues, under the way they look at this as to whether there's impairment, anything outside of 5 seconds, meaning anything outside of 25 to 35, they're going to allege that could be a sign of impairment. So here we are.
Mississippi's how you count, because I'd like to try to get this down, because I'm competitive, and I'm like, how do I not get 30 seconds?
I think it's up.
Can we do it one more time so I can try?
Sure.
I like to be competitive. I'm like, how do I not get 30
Okay.
seconds? Now I think I got it. All right, you tell me when.
All right. The way we're going to do it, I'm going to say you may begin, and as soon as you close your eyes, I'll start.
Okay.
Okay? So you may begin. But like I was saying, again, while you're trying to count to 30, you're on the side of the road, you're nervous. Again, how reliable is whether you can count to 30 seconds relatively close? Is that really a sign of impairment? And I'd be willing to challenge that any day in court. So
30.
a little better. You're 22.9.
Gosh.
Yeah.
Man, I'm just such a hyper dude. I mean,
So-
God, that
All
is tough though. I've done it 3 times. I tried, or twice, and I didn't get it down. Wow, so that's like an automatic. You guys, that's why shut up, lawyer up. These tests are meant to. I don't know how many times, but I would encourage you to try to do 30 seconds and do that.
I just,
Wow.
Yeah, we should have told everyone
Yeah.
to do it at home while we were doing it.
But you should, because
But
that
I
is really hard.
I just had one. Now this is a little far out, but I just had a guy, and said it in the report. He put his head down and opened his eyes at 102 seconds. So he was what? That's a minute and over a minute and a half. So but whether it's a sign of impairment, I don't know. But that's another. Those two are very popular right now, and NHTSA is training people on those to detect drug impairment.
Wow.
So we need to be aware of those. And looking back, there are a ton of. We joked a little bit. I don't know if we were on air last week when we talked about it, but there's another non-standardized field sobriety test that is still used out there. Is the alphabet test.
Oh, we talked about that.
The big deal is counting back,
You wanna
doing
see me
the
crash.
alphabet backwards. And NHTSA has specifically come out and said that's not reliable. Having someone do the alphabet backwards is not reliable because there is no way that's a sign of impairment, because I'd be willing to bet that over 50% of people can't do it.
Yeah.
I know I can't do it.
I can't do it.
But I will also tell you this. I have an active case right now where in the affidavit of probable cause, the officer asked my client to count or to do the alphabet test backwards. So he asked him, he said, "Do you know the alphabet backwards?" And my client said no, which was a great answer. I think there's a tendency for people to want to agree and to oblige and say they can do something.
Yeah.
He said no, and then the officer said, "Okay, I'll ask you to do it forward then." So that was a real nice example of kind of along the lines of shut up and lawyer up. Maybe not quite refusing everything, but if you're asked, "Can you do this?" you say no. Can you? Because even if you think you can, no.
I can't count to 30 seconds. That's bothering me.
But they can, if they do use the alphabet test. What it does say in the manuals is they'll give you a segment. They'll say, say the alphabet starting at J and stopping at R. Or if they let you start from the beginning, they'll say the alphabet the whole way through without singing it. And everybody's raised the A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and all that. So again, even something as simple as the alphabet, you just don't do it. Whether you can say the alphabet or not should have no relevant connection to impairment. How many times throughout the course of your day or your month or your year do you say the alphabet?
I'm dyslexic, so that's not my friend.
Yeah. The other thing is counting. Counting is also one. Well, they will tell you to count backwards. Count backwards from 91 to 67. And even that's a little tricky. So again, I don't think it relates at all to impairment. If you're given these non-standardized field sobriety tests, again.
No, I think the counting backwards is the worst, because what song do we relate to counting backwards? 99.
And I would bet you there's a video out there, someone doing the field sobriety test and singing that song.
Wow.
So non-standardized field sobriety tests, again, they're likely not going to be admissible. Well, I printed out, there were some that I never even heard of that we probably don't need to get into, but it was interesting in just researching this, how many different tests there can be. So we don't need to hammer this point too much, but again, outside of the standard field sobriety test, these are non-standardized. They're not likely to be admissible at trial, but they may be admissible to show probable cause.
How come they don't just do the breathalyzer and say, "Here, blow in this"?
Yeah, so the breathalyzers, again, can be used for probable cause. They're not admissible at trial. The manual indicates that for field sobriety testing, you should do the 3 standardized tests and then do the breathalyzer test. And there will be people who will say, "All right, I'm going to skip all the field sobriety tests. You want to breathalyze me? Go ahead." Again,
but you advise them just to lawyer.
Right. I mean, I guess the only if you first of all, they're not calibrated. They're not 100% accurate. So if you're close. If you're going to be close to the legal limit on the PBT, then they're going to take you in.
If you're below, what is it? I don't even know the legal limit. It's
0.08.
Oh, so if you're below that, can they take you in?
Yes, absolutely. They can take you in if you blow less than a 0.08 for a couple of reasons. Number one, they're mainly using the PBT to see if you have the presence of alcohol in your system. Okay, so if you've gone through the field sobriety test and you haven't performed well in their eyes, they're looking for another indicator that you may be close to the legal limit. So if you do not perform well on the field sobriety test in their eyes, and they give you the PBT and you're below the legal limit, they can still take you in. That you could take the PBT and be really low, 0.02, or let's say even 0.00, and they still take you in because if they suspect that you're under the influence of drugs, obviously the PBT is going to read 0. So that's why they do the field sobriety test first, to get an indication of impairment, and then the PBT just kind of adds to it then, or gives them the final indication that they think they need.
And at any point, they can be respectful and say, I choose to lawyer. Like, how would they say it if they're going through this? Because they're not going to talk to you right away, right? Like, people think they can just call you, hold on, I'm getting my lawyer on the phone. Can we dispel that's not happening?
Correct. The officer will not let you make a phone call during the course of the arrest. That's a myth. I get my phone call. Well, no, you don't. So, in the course of a DUI arrest, you do not have the right to consult an attorney. So, if you start to do some field sobriety tests because you think you're going to be all right, then you get into it and you think, this is not my best interest, you can stop at any point. You can stop in the middle of the test, say, you know what, officer, I'm just going to stop right here. I'll follow any demands that you give me, but I'm not going to perform any more field sobriety.
You have to do the blood draw, so don't stop with the not taking it. I'm not telling you what to do. Right. What I'm saying is there's consequences, right? You're not getting out of that.
If you refuse to give blood, number one, you will get either a 12-month or an 18-month license suspension right off the bat. Doesn't matter if you're found guilty of the DUI or if it's pitched, or even if they had probable cause to arrest. The refusal is an automatic. And what is worse now in your county?
So even if they came back and their blood draw was negative, they're still losing their license for refusing?
Yeah. So if you refuse, they can then go get a warrant. Okay, so you've already refused. So that's the suspension can take effect if the officer pursues it. And all they have to do is notify PennDOT. And then they have the ability to seek a warrant from a judge. Say, look, we suspect this person of DUI. They've refused the blood draw. Now we want a warrant that gives them essentially, in the mind of the prosecution, an order to give blood. And then when they come back with that, if you then give blood, they now have your blood test results, right? Mm-hmm. So they'll charge you, they have additional evidence, and they'll charge you with the proper DUI at that point. And you have the additional 1-year license suspension. So if you end up being convicted of that DUI, you're going to have a 2-year license suspension because of the refusal.
So kind of going through the process with people, because it is scary, you're intimidated, it's all happening at different hours, different times. So you go through this, you decide you want to go have an attorney, have Bobby be your attorney, Robert J. Schefter, attorney at law, and you go through, you go in the lockup, you go to central booking, you're still not getting a call, you're worried, you wait for your charges, you can call them ahead of time, we'll give you a consultation, but you want to call them once you get your charges, but you can call them ahead of time just to...
Right, the officer will do one of two things. Typically, if it's a first offense DUI, they're not going to give you the charges on the spot. They're going to release you because if you have had a blood draw, they need to send the blood sample away to a lab to be tested. Then the lab prepares a report, sends it back to the officer. They prepare the charges based on your blood test results as shown in the report. And then you get the charges in the mail. On average, that's going to be about a 3 to 4 week turnaround period to get your charges. If it is a second or subsequent DUI within the last 10 years, the officer is going to charge you right away. You're going to walk out of there with general impairment charges so they can get you on supervised bail. Supervised bail means an alcohol monitor and a curfew and all kind of things. So that's typically when they give you the charges right away if they want to get you on supervised bail. They'll also give you charges right away typically if you're from a far distance away. I have a client who lives in Georgia right now. He got his charges right on the spot because he had to post $5,000 bail before they were going to release him. So typical York County first offense DUI, you won't get the charges right away.
So if you're out of state, you could do jail time up here, right? You got to come up here to do your jail time? Is that how that works? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, if you're convicted of the DUI eventually, yes, it's up to your home state, your home jail system, if they're going to accept you, and up to the judge up here. And I've done this a number of times. Typically, the judge's DA's office up here, they don't care. You know, if you live in Georgia, work in Georgia, and the county jail in Georgia says, yes, we'll house them, then they're typically fine with it. So typically what happens is the judge says, you have a report date of February 1st. You either need to show up in your county prison on February 1st, or I need to have something in writing that says that the Georgia jail is going to take you. And you can report there.
Wow.
But it is a process. Basically, the person who lives in Georgia, I tell my client, you're going to have to do the legwork. You're going to have to contact the warden down there, say, hey, can I do my jail time here? And you know, you have to pay to do it. And sometimes they'll charge people who aren't actually their inmates a higher fee to stay there. So, yeah.
I never even thought about
yeah.
That's kind of.
Yeah, so you get into all types.
But that's why you want to contact an attorney.
Right.
There's so much stuff, and you don't realize how much you know, and you don't realize how much you don't know. And street justice is never going to work.
Correct. Absolutely. I mean, I was at hearings this morning. I dealt with a very experienced officer who I've known and had some cases with, and we were able to resolve a case this morning. And you know, I have the utmost respect for our law enforcement. I really do. And it's not about battling with them, it's about representing my client, and they know that. And the officers will respect and get along with good attorneys who they know they're doing their job, not being ignorant or arrogant, but are representing their clients zealously. And they know I'm going to do that, and I know they're going to do their best to defeat whatever argument I have. So I think there's a mutual respect there, and that's important.
And I think there totally is. I've seen this from all sides now, and I'll tell you, it's a lot more compassionate than people think. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, everyone in here has families, and they're not really looking. They're looking to straighten things out.
Right. And that's a good segue, Shane. Next week or next show, you know what I'm going to do? We're going to do a show on the haters. Okay.
Yes.
The people out there who comment on my page and others who say, how can you represent this guy who was a DUI and killed people, or just in general, criminal defense attorneys who represent people who are charged with horrific crimes. And it'll be a little step back from what we've been doing, but I think it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to address that subject. I'm looking forward to it.
I'm looking forward to it. That's going to be amazing, because if you were that person, you would look at it differently.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, listen, guys, shut up and lawyer up. Right here, local experience, reliable, 717-747-9048.
That's it.
Right on Leaders Heights.
Yep. DUIresults.com.
Attorney Robert J. Schefter, attorney at law.
Actually.
Thank you. Y'all have a good day. Please share this out. Invite your friends. No one's going to tell you they have a DUI, but when you share it or invite, you give your friends the opportunity to lessen their charges, lessen their stress, and get back to living a better life. Thank you.
Thanks.
That was a nice ending.